which case is it? I said, the Alki Chop Chop case. So like you guys, I nickname all my cases as like the Alki case was Michael Dudley. He got into it with two roommates of his. He chopped them all up, and Netflix came out and did a thing on it, and it just got released. I had people hit me up like, "Oh, you're famous." Like, no, I'm not famous. But
so no way for the audience. It's on Netflix somewhere.
yeah, worst roommate ever.
Oh, okay.
It's my girlfriend watched it already, and she says there's like 5 episodes. It's number 4.
Okay.
And it's about a guy named Mike Dudley, and he gets into it with his 2 druggy roommates, and he kills them, butchers them up, and puts them in suitcases and drops some of them off in Alki, and then some in the Duwamish.
Okay. Can you introduce yourself for me, please?
My name is Jim Cooper. I just retired on the 18th with the Seattle Police Department as a homicide detective. And it's 35 years and 2 months I'm going on now.
So literally 10 days ago.
Yes.
So I am getting you fresh here. Okay. So Jim, tell me a little bit about your background. Tell me a little bit about growing up. What kind of kid were you? Give me an idea about your family. And was there anything with your family, any experience growing up that led you to law enforcement?
So I am one of 4 kids. My mother is 2nd generation Korean. My dad is a white guy, was in the military. He met her in Korea. And my dad went into the military police, went from there into investigations, the Criminal Investigations Division, or the CID. And as he used to tell me, the CID would be equivalent to like the FBI in civilian time, but the CID covers all of the military. I'm like, cool. So, but he did, all aspects of crime, drugs, murders, everything like that. But as a military brat, my dad was a 20-year Army guy. We lived on military installations most of the time, and all the time till he retired in, I want to say 1974, 75. We were living in Alaska. We were living at Fort Wainwright, just right outside of Fairbanks. And of course, typical Army, they're like, where do you want to retire? My dad had 18 months left. He goes, I think we want to retire here. And a week later, like, nope, we're shipping you down to Fort Lewis. You can retire out of Fort Lewis.
Oh.
So he did his last 18 months in Fort Lewis. I loved living on an Army installation. I actually wrote a paper about it in one of my sociology classes about the differences. It's like a small town of its own. But the thing is, everybody back then was vetted. Everybody was an upstanding citizen to be in the military. So, and everybody had that feeling of taking care of their own at that time. We didn't leave our doors locked. I did the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th grades there in Alaska. And it's Alaska. Summers are forever. And as a little kid, and my brother was a year younger, it's like we had bicycles. We played baseball. We played football. We played sports. I took up fishing. There was a river that ran through the base, a huge river. And my brother and I would ride our bikes. I saved up money, got a fishing rod. We went down there. And that's how safe it was. I mean, it was like on the military installation, the military police would drive by and see, and everybody was nice. And it was like you didn't have to worry about being snatched or being a victim. So my parents, I'd tell them, hey, I'm going fishing down at the Chena River. And my mom was like, bring back some fish. I mean, she's Korean. She's like, you're going to go do it. You better bring something back. I'm like, okay. And I would. And I really liked fishing. And we played baseball during the summer and stuff like that. My dad was in the military. He was in the CID, and he always had paraphernalia around the house. When I say paraphernalia, magazines, books, stuff like that. As a kid, as a guy, it's like you'd read these magazines, and it was the pictures and everything. Like, I didn't really understand everything I was looking at or reading, but it's like, this is kind of cool shit. Excuse my language.
It's all good. It's all good.
But it was always cool. It was always fun. But now that I talk about this stuff, now that I look back on it, probably a few things that thank God my dad straightened me out on. For some reason, I would ride around on my bike, and if I saw stuff in people's yards that I liked, I just take it. To me, I was like, well, they're leaving it out. So it's obviously, and being a second, third, fourth grader, what is that, like 7, 8, something like that? I came home with something one day, and my dad said, "Where'd you get that?" I, oh, I saw this yard. He goes, "The fuck?" And it's like, uh, he he took me back there and made me take it up there and take it back and say, "Hey," and the people were really nice about it. But my dad was, I thought I was going to get a nice whooping, but it was like, because back then you could punish your kids with corporal punishment. But at the same time, my dad just looked at me. He goes, "You just can't do that. And there's nothing worse in the world than being a thief." He goes, "I deal with thieves all the time." He says, "You don't want to go down that path." And him looking at me and like, I'd be very, I'm very disappointed in you. And it was like, oh boy. So my dad grew up on the East Coast. He's a Jersey guy. He was probably about 5'10 ish, 5'11 ish, 220 on the hoof. And growing up, he had a brother and 2 sisters. His family was Catholic. He went to Catholic school for a little while. Then when he got into his high school days, he went to the local high school, Asbury Park Blue Bishops. Asbury Park is the same city that Bruce Springsteen was born and raised in. And I'm like, "Dad, you know Bruce Springsteen?" He goes, "Fuck no, that guy's an idiot." And it's like, but my dad was like, his sisters, my aunts, when my father passed away like 12 years ago, he was buried in Puyallup, and they showed up and they brought a scrapbook that his 2 sisters had done of his high school glory days. And I knew my dad played football and was big man on campus, and he worked as a Coast Guard during or a lifeguard during the summer off the beaches and stuff like that. And they'd row the boats out in the surf and stuff like that. But he played offensive line and defensive line. And it wasn't till one fall day, because I was into fishing, and we were living right off of Spanaway Lake, right outside of Fort Lewis, now off base. And it was like, we were out there, and my dad was always bringing his special coffee. He sucked as a fisherman. I'll just tell you that. Okay. And I was into bass fishing. I had hundreds of dollars worth of equipment. And my dad would pick stuff up, and I was like, "No." And I'd give him something simple to work with, and he would be infuriated. I like, "Because you'll fuck that shit up, Dad." And it's like, but he'd have his couple coffees, and then he'd be still. And it was like, and we'd fish and stuff like that. You know, he would talk about his past. And then when I started playing golf with him, he started talking more about his past. But I'll never forget, we were out there, and he was drinking a special coffee, and he started talking about football and how he had a chance to maybe play semi-pro. I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, I got a scholarship to Penn, University of Penn. That's kind of an Ivy League school, right?" Like, the fuck are you talking about? He goes, "Yeah, I got this scholarship to Penn." And I said, "Well, why aren't we living high on the cow? You within the NFL?" He goes, "That's why I'm always hard on you guys about your schooling and stuff like that." Because I always enjoyed schooling. I don't think I tried very hard, and I was a B student. I was happy with being a B student, 3.2, 3.4, 3.5. I don't need a 4.0. But my dad would always try. I'm like, "I don't need that. That's too much headache." But I was a good student. But my dad and my mom was on top of it with me and my sisters and brother. But he sat there, "Yeah, I went to Penn." And he goes, "This is why I'm so hard on you, because I went to Penn on a football scholarship. But that first year, I just fucked it off. I didn't do the schoolwork or anything. And it wasn't like I couldn't. I just partied and chased skirts. And then I was flunking out of college. And it was like, I couldn't come home, tell your granddad, because his dad, my grandfather, was a much bigger man and talked with a deep voice, was a very nice grandfather to us. But I don't think you'd want to cross this man in any way." And my dad and his brother and siblings, it was a Catholic household. So they were probably a lot more stricter. So he knew he couldn't go home. So he joined the military. He enrolled in the Army, and he came home from basic training, tell his dad and my grandfather and my grandmother that here I am. And then he ends up joining a military police detachment out of basic training. It was during the Vietnam War. And half his, when their orders came in to ship out at the last second, half of his detachment, military police, end up going to Korea. And that was his half. Now, I've never been in the military. I've never trained to prepare to go to war or, you know, I mean, law enforcement's a semi or paramilitary operation, but we're there to save lives. And, military is there to take lives if you fuck with us. And it's like, so to, talking to my dad later on in life, one of his biggest regrets is he never got a chance to go to Vietnam. And I'm like, but all these people, he goes, yeah, but you don't, he goes, until you serve, until you understand being in a hole with another guy and they go into the line of fire and you don't get to go. Um, he goes, that's one of my biggest regrets. I never got to go, whether I lived or not. That wasn't on my mind. It was like my guys were there. And I kind of understood that concept years and years later through my career, uh, like in narcotics, serving search warrants and stuff like that. I retired with 35 years and 2 months. During that time, I built up a ton of sick time. So the the normal practice with our department or a lot of departments, because a lot of departments don't give you full pay on your sick time. They don't match it dollar for dollar. And the city of Seattle gave you a quarter on the dollar for your sick time. So I had 2,300 hours of sick time because I, knock on wood, I rarely was sick. And I was one of those guys on the department that get a little certificate in the mail. Thank you for taking only one sick day this year. And I'm like, okay. So when I was in narcotics and we served warrants, we were trained to serve narcotic search warrants. Even if I did not feel 100% good, cold, flu, whatever, I never missed a warrant. Never missed a warrant because it's the feeling of my guys are going to battle and I'm not there. And if I'm at home dicking the dog or something like that, and then I get a call, hey, Joe Schmo was shot on the entry and stuff like that. For me, on warrant services, I always wanted to be in the first two elements going into a warrant. I enjoyed firearm training, tactics training. I like to think I was pretty good at it. I was the type of person that I didn't have a problem. If I'm lawfully there and I have a weapon on you and you pull a weapon on me, I will shoot you. I have no qualms doing it. Where I've seen other cops, they freeze up or they don't, they're, I guess you have to come to peace with yourself. And I did that early on with my career to realize you may have to take someone's life and you need to make peace with that right now versus when the shit hits the fan. Like active shooter, when all the agencies started doing active shooter after Columbine and stuff like that. And back then, which today they don't do this, but back then they had what they called simunitions, real guns, but shot little freaking pellet paintball things, smaller than a paintball. It was like the head of a eraser, but it would explode on you. And I've been shot with paintballs; those hurt. These little simunitions, you swear someone shot you. It hurt like a motherfucker. And it was like, and once you get shot a few times with those things, it really is self-training, self-correcting. But I would go through active shooter training with people on the department. And when I was in narcotics, we'd go as a group. And after the first 2 years of training, the instructors are like, you guys can't come through here together. You guys are just too good. You're defeating all the things. We need to put you under some pressure. You guys can come like in partners, but you're going to work with all these other people on the department. And once I did that, it was like, holy shit. It's an eye opener because you may be a cop, Niles, but you may not be that guy that when I show up to an active shooter, I may like, hey, I forgot something in the car. Can you go get it? I'm gonna run in and handle the problem. Come back and you're like, what? I'm like, done. Guy's dead. Let's get out of here. There were people in there. that had not come to grips with that concept of popping a cap on someone and putting them down. It's like, if you don't do that, then the ultimate thing you have to do is maybe take someone's life. If you can't come to grips with that, you're kind of living a farce as a cop. Not to say I'm a killer or anything like that, but you have to have that grip. And it was like, I'd go through active shooter training and it's like, wait, you're telling me, you're giving me this gun, this ballistic shield, this helmet, and all this gear, and there's a bad guy in there shooting people in there, and you want me to go in there and to neutralize him? Yes, I'll be right back. We go in there, clear corners, bad guy pop out. There are people like, Seattle, please show me your hands. It's like, he has his hands right there. He has a gun in it or a rifle. What do you give? You just walk up and, and just drop them. Yeah, that's active shooter training. That's what they want you to do. And a lot of people have a hard time getting around that.
So let me ask you a little bit about okay, so before we get on, I'm going to assume, based on what you just said, the reason why you went into law enforcement was because of your dad.
Well, the reason I tried not to go into law enforcement was my dad. Because my dad, I loved him. He was a great dude. And I mean, he was on a pedestal up here. The guy was integrity-wise, honesty. Matter of fact, he left, when he retired out of the military, he tried to get hired by the Pierce County Sheriff's Office. They washed him out during the oral boards. And the reason they washed him out was, I'm sorry, Mr. Cooper, you're just too honest. I saw it. He told me, he came home with the paperwork, and it's like, that was an issue. For whatever reason, he was too honest of a guy. Crazy. But years later, when I tried to get on with Pierce County, I got washed out too. Pierce County, there's a handful of good guys, but their department's kind of wacko. So that's my personal feeling, just from dealing with them. But so I went through high school. My dad wanted me to go to Pacific Lutheran University. I didn't want to go to college at that time. I was ready to get out, make money. I wanted to get on with my life. He went out, got the student loans, everything was set. And like 2 or 3 weeks before I had to go sign up for my class, I'm like, I don't want to do this. Shit hit the fan. And it was like, well, you're going to do something. You're going to join the Army. I'm like, no. He goes, why not? I'm like, too many chiefs, not enough Indians are in the Army nowadays. Oh, my mom's like, leave him alone. So he's like, you're going to do something. So I went to vocational school for telecommunications. I really enjoyed it. And I could look at a schematic, electronic schematic, because it was installing phone systems, electronic phone systems, everything from running a line crew, putting in poles, running cable, to high-tech electronic systems for huge businesses and hospitals, because they all have their own PBX or private forensic exchange in the basement, which runs the whole thing. The telephone companies just pop the lines in there, do what you want with them, and then it goes off this thing. I love doing that. I could look at the schematic, and it was like, okay, you connect this, boom, and the light comes on. It works. It's like, woohoo! That was an 18-month course. I got hired before I finished. I was top of my class, worked for an outfit in Everett. And there's all these old fuckers in there. And I was already top dog. And this was a outfit or company of like 15 people. And, the owner was a former GTE phone guy, and this was his own business. And I'm looking around, I'm like, okay, I'm making this much money. I am just about to turn 20, 21. I'm kind of at the top of my field already. I see why all these guys are alcoholics and shit like that. It's like, so I came home one day and I was talking to my dad. Because he was always interested, I'm his oldest son. He's like, how's it going? What's work like? And I'm like, He goes, you have an issue? I said, no, I just realized I'm about to turn, 20, 21. And it's like, I don't know how high I can go with this. I close to the ceiling already. He goes, what are you talking about? I told him, and I said, I'm already the top guy in the field for these guys. I go out, do trouble calls. I handle all this stuff. Then I put these systems together. And the guys that I am now, I said, I've elevated in 6 months to the top of the food chain already. And these guys behind me are doing stuff that they have no education in this field, and they're just like with duct tape and stuff connecting wires. I'm like, and I'm going back correcting their stuff. And I said, but I'm already at the top of my field. I don't know. He goes, well, why don't you become a cop? Join law enforcement. I'm like, no. He's like, why not? I said, because you did it. And it wasn't to say, I don't want to do it because you. It was, I was saying to him, I can't be you. You're this. I'm down here. There's no way I could top, even if I could be half the guy my dad is, I'd be happy. So, but I had a new brother-in-law that just got hired with Puyallup Police Department. And we were at a barbecue or something like that. My dad being my dad, was pecking at me again. And my mom's like, leave him alone. I don't want him going out and getting shot and stuff. My dad, he would wear a vest. Leave him alone. He's a big boy. And, but it was like, my brother-in-law, he's like, well, James, Puyallup is hiring. We're going to send out a thing to test. My dad said, just sign up, see what happens. Okay. If you don't like it, if you don't do well, then we know it's not your thing. I'm like, fine, I'll do it. And I just turned 21. So I submitted it. And it was like the day before the test, I'm at work and it's this gal's 21st birthday. And my buddies are, hey, it's so-and-so, let's go. Like, I got this big test tomorrow. Like, just come have a few. How big? I like, yeah, that's right. So I go out there, one drink leads to another, running around with this gal and her friends. And I get home to my apartment like 3 or 4 in the morning. I got to be from Everett to Puyallup by 8 o'clock. Okay, so I take a short nap, shower. No, I don't even shower. I just put on sweats, still reeking of booze, go down there. And I'm like, this is just a written test. There's people in suits and shit like that. I'm like, the fuck is going on? I put my hoodie up, and as we're checking up, the guy in there that's taking the cards that shows that you're supposed to, says, what, can I help you with something, sir? Are you lost? I'm like, I'm here for the test. He goes, oh, okay. And I run into a couple of high school guys, and they're like, what are you doing here? I'm like, I'm going to take this test. You're going to try to be a cop? I'm like, yeah. What's wrong with that? Well, it's pretty demanding. Like, yeah, just saying. And I'm walking away like, fuck you, asshole. You don't think I can do this? So I went in there. They started the test, and it was a huge auditorium. And I think there was 400 people. You pick up your test, and everybody's sitting there, and the guy or gal, they were telling you what's going to happen. And they said, we'll tell you when to start. And then it's for these many hours. Sit there, and it's like, they start us. I open up the test, look at it, go through it. And I'm like, is that it? I mean, it's like if Joe takes Jane's dog, is it a crime? Yes. Is this? Yes. No. Yes. True. False. I'm like, is this? I'm like, and people are like sweating bullets, and I'm just thinking, Jesus, I need coffee. My head hurts, and I like, do I just sit here? Because I don't know, everybody's else's head's down. I am done, and we're like maybe an hour into this, and it's a 4-hour test, and I'm done. And it was like, I get up, and people are looking, and it's like, going, and the guy goes, "Is there an issue?" I said, "I'm done." He goes, "Really?" I like, "Is there any other part of this test that I haven't done?" He goes, "No, if you say you're done, okay." And I stumble out of there, find a Starbucks, go to McDonald's, get food, make the hump all the way back to Everett, and fall in bed. My dad calls me, like, because the test was at 8. I was home by 12-ish. My dad calls me like 2 or 3. I'm like, what? He goes, how'd it go? What do you mean, how'd it go? He goes, how'd it go? I said, I took the test. I said, we got 2 weeks to figure it out. 2 weeks comes. I get a card from the city of Puyallup that says, thank you for taking the test and you're interested in joining the Puyallup Police Department. You placed number 13 out of 300 and some odd people. We are taking the top 30 people, or the top 30 on this test to continue on in the process. Like, I'm looking and I'm like, I open the door, look around, if someone's fucking with me, close the door. Like, so I call my dad, like, Dad, I think it says I finished 18th and I scored like an 87. I think they had my score on there. It was high 80s, I think. And for me, knowing my school, that's how I was usually a high 80s guy, low 90s guy, because the test was common sense questions. It's like, there's not a lot of thinking here. This is common sense stuff. If you have problems with this, you got issues. And I just filled it out. And it was like, oh my God, I called my dad and told him, and he was all hooting and hollering, and called my brother-in-law. And I went through the process, made it to the top 3. And the psychological, they bring this guy in there. And he puts me in this chair where my feet are off the ground like a little baby. And it's like, and he gave me these, I had to take those, the psychological paper, the testing and stuff. Like, it took several hours. They flew, at that time, Puyallup was flying this guy up from LA. He'd do LAPD stuff. And they were paying him big bucks. So he comes in there and he has the results, my tests and stuff like that. And he starts talking. He just asked me a few questions. He gives me a piece of paper. Draw me a figure of a guy, or draw me a figure of a person. I'm like, what do you mean? Just draw me a figure of a person. I'm thinking, this guy's whack. So I draw a stick figure. There. Do you want hands and feet on it too? Or no, it's that I like, yeah, I'm done. Okay. And he walks out, comes back, or a woman comes back. She goes, okay, we're done with the interview. I'm like, the fuck? I drove all the way down from Everett, and we're here not even 10 minutes, and this asshole is done with me. I'm like, fine. So I walk out, get a notice. I got washed out because it's psychological. My brother-in-law, because at that time Puyallup was a little smaller, he had someone in human resources pull my jacket and find out what this guy wrote about me. And he wrote in there that, based on my application, I had multiple jobs, so I wasn't stable. Oh, no college education, so not very intelligent. So basically, he said I was a dumbass for never going to school, even though I went to vocational school, finished in top of my class, got a job before I was done with that, and running this. But the guy thought I was an idiot. I don't know if you've ever tested for local departments before you went DEA. Mm-hmm. That was like a kick to the gut, because I'd figured about the testing processes. You filling out all this paperwork, they want to know everything about you. Like the psychological, what they call the MMIP or whatever, the Minnesota, whatever it is like, there's questions on there, talking about, do you have blood in your stool? Do you think about this? It's very personal. And, my brother-in-law was like, you just got to be honest about it. Because if you don't, these psychologists can detect that. And I'm like, okay. So, you go through all this stuff, your background, everything, you open your guts up to these people, and then they tell you, yeah, you suck. You're not good enough to be a cop. And it was a real kick to the gut. And I was more angry than like, oh, I was pissed. But then my brother-in-law was like, look, it's a test. Okay. He says, go enroll at community college. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, go do it. And then you'll have it for the next place you test at. For the next psychological, you'll be able to say you went to college. I said, what makes you think I'm going to have another psychological exam? He goes, just trust me. Don't be so hard at it. Go do it. Rolled in Everett Community College, and I found that I loved college. It was fun. The classes were great. The professors were great. The work was great. I was going to school at night, going to school at night. I was working days, pulling a full job. And I enjoyed my college life so much. I took a full load at night, not just one or two courses. So it was great. And I tested with other departments. Up north, they called it the Big Three in Snow County, which was Linwood, Mount Lake Terrace, and Edmonds. Those three they called the Big Three. They would test together. So I tested with them. Then I don't know how I found out about Seattle testing, but I thought about it, and I was like, and I was talking with my family about it. My brother-in-law, like, ooh, Seattle. That's the big city. It's dangerous there. You could get shot. And my brother-in-law, well, they teach you how to shoot back. I'm like, really? He goes, yeah. He goes, it doesn't happen very often. So, he says, but they're this and this and this big department, lots of opportunity stuff. So I applied. And
So let me ask you this.
yeah,
Let me get a little bit of background for the audience there. So you start in 89. How old are you?
59 now.
No, no, no. How old are you when you start?
I don't know, 22?
Okay. So when you start with Seattle, 'cause I want to talk with you about this. What kind of city is Seattle when you begin? When you start on patrol, is it a dangerous city? Just describe Seattle how it was then, because I want to talk about how it ended up when you just retired.
So I got hired with the city of Seattle, and I went through the FTO phase, which was 3 different FTOs, about 3 weeks each. Finally ended up in the East Precinct working third watcher graveyard. And I'll never forget. I mean, I knew the East Precinct is located up on Capitol Hill. Yeah, I mean, there's a large gay community. You're talking to, I never met a gay person in my life up to this point. At least I didn't know they were gay. But I'll never forget driving to the precinct for my first night, or my first FTO phase was Third Watch East there. I was still living in Everett, and I drove there, and I got to this intersection just north of the precinct. It's a 4-way stop, and there's 2 people in the car there, and they're making out. And it's 4-way stop, people, let's go. And I'm like, I'm gonna be late. So I lay on the horn, and the people turn around, and it's 2 dudes. I'm like, Now, I don't have anything against, that type of lifestyle or anything. But for me, it was a culture shock. I was like, holy fuck, this this is what it looks like, and it's like, so, but I think I was 22-ish when I started, 20, 21, 22. I mean, I've been in law enforcement for over half my life. And it's like, but I'm looking at it, and it's like, I was I was a kid, and it was like, this is great through all the training through the academy. It's like, you're brand new and shiny. It's like, let's go take on the world.
When you start though, how big is Seattle Police Department?
When I started the Seattle Police Department, we were about 1,100 strong, sworn personnel,
Okay, and so now you just retired. Well, how big is the department?
a hair under 900 after 35 years and 2 months.
Right.
And when I started, it was at the beginning of the crack epidemic, or whatever you want to call it, coming into Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
So, I quickly had a knack for making drug arrests. I loved making big arrests. I loved going after bad guys. Just some of the people I worked with. Why else be a cop unless you want to arrest the worst guy in the world, right? I followed in the footsteps of a lot of the older guys that I watched that were proactive. How did you know this guy had this warrant or stuff? And they, just like catchers in the major leagues, they got books on all the pitchers, right? Some of these guys would have book on the bad guys. And it was like, oh my God. He goes, I knew that because I came in here 20 minutes before, 30, I got here 30 minutes before roll call and spent 10 minutes on the computer checking on who's who and where we're going tonight. I'm like, wow, we can do that? Yeah. And it was like, so.
When you start, 22 years old, you're on patrol, you scared?
Oh, hell yeah, to a point. But it was like, I wasn't scared. If you're asking me like if I was scared,
Yeah.
I wasn't scared.
Yeah.
I was scared that I wouldn't be able to recognize a crime or do my job, stuff like that. And it was like, because I'll never forget it. The first night I was off FTO, and up on the East Precinct area at the time, you had Edward Sector, George Sector, and Charlie Sector. Edward Sector is most of Capitol Hill down to Lake Washington, and then Charlie Sector is most of the Central District. George Sector is from Yesler towards the water, down south to I-90-ish area. So they hadn't assigned me to a squad yet, but I just cleared FTO, so they threw me in. We're gonna put you, since you're a new guy, we're gonna put you in Edward sector. I'm like, oh great, and it's like, because my last FTO was in Edward sector, and we were Edward 1, which ran around all the gay bars and stuff like that. And let me tell you, there's nothing worse than you go into these bars to deal with people, and gay guys are grabbing your butt and shit like that, and it's like it's like you're trying to keep people off you, but you're trying, and it's like, okay, not village people. I'm a real cop. I gotta do my job here. Go stand over there. I mean, my field training officer, Dane Bean, who was an older guy, glasses, he laughed. He would just laugh. I'm like, Dane, you're good. I got your back. He goes, what's a good pinching? Is it an assault or like? And he always loved giving me homework. And I'm like, no, it's not assault. He goes, really? He goes, that's your homework. Find out tomorrow. And you better have an answer when we get in the car. I want RCW, but I'm like, motherfucker. But my first night out, they put me in Edward 5, which was that patrolled East. What was it? East. What's the street there? It was towards the water, Lake Union, and it was like the houseboats and crap like that. And nothing went on in Edward 5. I went over there and it was like, and it was a Thursday night. It was the summer and it was popping. It was going off. Shots being called in, all sorts of stuff. And I'm like, I'm sitting here driving around here. It's like, this is not what I signed up for. So I made around to the precinct and someone's like, aren't you Edward 5? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, what are you doing at the precinct? I said, do you hear anything going on in Edward 5? Any radio call? No. So I got back in my car and I hung on the periphery of Edward 5 or Edward sector and Charlie sector. And I just rolled around and I'm like, okay, I'll just know the streets. Hot call comes out, man beating a woman, 23 in Union. I'm like, I start going that way and I'm stepping on it. And I was like, woohoo, let's go. I want to see a good beating. No one's answering it. And I've cleared Edward sector. I'm in Charlie sector. And I know I'm like 2 or 3 blocks out. And it's like, no one is grabbing this call. And I'm like, and I go, Edward 5. They go, Edward 5. I'm like, Edward 5, I'm coming up on 23 in Union. Why don't you give me that call? And no one is saying anything on the air. And as I turn the corner, because my biggest fear is, am I going to be able to know a bad guy from a good guy? And I turned the corner and it was like, there's a woman there and this guy has his cane and he's whacking the hell out of her. And he stops right there when he, like deer in headlights. And I jump out like, see how please, come over here. Throws the cane down, comes over. And I hook him up, put him in the back seat. And I'm like, okay, I don't think this stuff's going to be that hard to figure out. And from there, it just, I had 2 more nights in Edward sector. And finally the sergeant's like, you can't go. I'm like, Sarge, there's nothing going on in Edward sector. Either put me in another squad where the shit's going on, or else I'm going to jump calls. And the older guys, one guy would say something to me, but the other guys were like, there's more than enough work to go around. And if you want to handle it, I'll back you, So I end up getting picked by a sergeant to work George sector. And I worked that for a month by myself. But the sergeant realized, you're getting too much shit. You're tying up other resources. I'm just going to give you a partner. Like, fine. And after that, I had a partner for the rest of my career everywhere I went.
Wow.
So it's like, just because I ran around at Mach 5 with my hair on fire and I loved it. It was great.
So when you got hired on, because later on you go to the app team, you go to the narcotics team, and ultimately end up in homicide. Was there ever a goal when you began? Did you go, I want to do X? Or was it just kind of steady progression? You kind of fell into it?
Talking to my dad, he always pushed that, you should be a detective. And I'm like, yeah. But working Third Watch East, I crossed paths with a lot of guys that were really good detectives, that were proactive, that were out hunting in the middle of the night. And if they needed, a couple of guys that could handle themselves and weren't afraid of their own shadow, it's like, they contact you on the air and like, meet me over here and like, I'm going to go arrest this guy. I need you guys to come with me. And it fascinated me. The detective stuff fascinated me. It was fun. And I realized, early on, once I started going to court and stuff like that, I want to be the guy calling the shots. I want to be running the case. I don't want to be a periphery guy because this shit's too important. So I slowly evolved into that attitude of, I want it to be my show.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be, I need glory or anything like that. I think I got that from my mom because my mom was never happy. She would tell one of us kids to do something, and then she'd come back and she was never happy with the way we did it, and she'd redo it. And then we'd all get an ass kicking for it. And I was like, the fuck, Mom? Why didn't you just do it your first time? To get another ass kicking. So at the same time, I realized early on that I wanted to go up the chain as far as investigations. Early on, I was fascinated with the world of drugs and how everything happened in the world of drugs, all the violence. And if you think about it, even today, I still think it's true that most of your property crimes, most of your assaults and stuff, if you peel back that onion far enough, which, eventually when I'm in homicide, there's always a drug angle there.
Yeah.
I mean, as a homicide investigator, you look at, if you put 5 people in front of me and I do a background on all of them, I can tell you who's more than likely going to get killed and a person that's going to live a happy life. Not that I'm a soothsayer or anything like that, but there are people that live a certain lifestyle that give them the propensity of more than likely you may end up getting shot, stabbed, beaten, or killed, versus someone that doesn't live that lifestyle, a sheep that eats in the grass in the green field, stays there, does what it says, will live a very boring life, which is good.
Yeah.
Which is good. But at the same time, it's like, yeah. So it's like, I had a desire for it. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I talked to other people about detectives' positions, and it was like, oh yeah, burglary theft. I'm like, oh fuck no, that's boring. And it's fucking, you get inundated with cases, And then I talked to some people that went to sexual assault, and one of the people you interviewed, Cloyd Steiger, he was in sexual assault. And talking to him, he's like, they spent more time disproving cases than proving. Every 4th or 5th, 6th case may be an actual rape or sexual assault. But a lot of times you have cases where you just have people that are angry at another person or have regret for doing some type of activity with another. You still have to take the complaint and you investigate it. And when I say they were disproving, they weren't disproving it. It's just following the evidence. And it's a lot of legwork to find out, okay, this was consensual. And, fortunately, it's not a crime. So I didn't want to do that. And I'll never forget, we had a homicide, and at that time, the detectives handled all the calls. They came out, and I was like, and they were so professional, so cool. And I was like, you fuckers are badass. The way they walked around and everything like that, even command staff, like, got the fuck out of their way. And it was like, and I went home and I called up my dad. And that time I started playing golf with him. And it was like, I was talking to him. I said, what do you think about homicide? And he goes, yeah, that's great. That's great. But he goes, you need time to investigations. So I went into narcotics.
Yeah. So just real briefly, because I want to talk to you, kind of focus on a little bit of homicide, but you and I met in narcotics.
Right.
And I think it's fair to say that you kind of had developed kind of a niche of doing undercover, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And ultimately, not only do you have this niche, but you become an instructor. Talk a little bit about doing undercover, and what kind of advice or what were you teaching to these other guys about what's the, I don't want to say what's the secret sauce, but what does it take to be a good undercover officer?
Oh boy. So I came to narcotics and I was a baby narc, and you remember Miles Hawks.
Mm-hmm.
So Miles Hawks, good friend of mine. And I mean, I'd fight anybody that disagreed with me, but he's probably the best cop I ever met in my life. That guy had the gift of gab. He understood detail. He could do complex cases. And talk about, he's a nice guy. He was always a nice guy. And it was so sad when he passed away. But at the same time, I came to narcotics and he was my trainer. So I worked with him exclusively for like 3 months. We rolled around in a car together. He was so great. And he was easy to work with. And he pointed out stuff, showed me how to do the paperwork and how to do narcotics investigation, how to deal with informants and stuff. But uh, part of being in the baby narc is like we do buy bust downtown.
Mm-hmm.
The baby narcs would be the guys that have to go out on the street and buy the dope for the act teams to arrest these guys. And it's a sophisticated operation, you know, to a point. But by then, when I first came in, I let my hair grow out, which, you know, go figure, huh? Right? I actually had a ponytail. I had a goatee, kind of unshaven. And I wore this reddish, greenish flannel that I wore for years, my first couple of years of narcotics, until my mom yelled at me about it. I had a bandana on. Miles had taught me some Spanish words because he worked for LAPD. He spoke Spanish really well. And he said, you just need to know these words. When you come into narcotics, you realize there's a racial level of people in there who to buy drugs from. Black guys, unless you're a black guy, don't try to buy drugs from a black guy unless you're getting introduced, because black guys will try to beat you or rip you, one or the other. White guys, they're liars. They don't have drugs. They're users. Hispanics, no matter what level they were, street level all the way up the food chain, they're businessmen. They're there for business. Don't fuck with them, and then they'll do business with you. I'm like, okay. So Miles taught me some words and understanding, and I kind of got my feet grounded with some of his informants and stuff. So I go out for my first buy. And from the time I walked out of our staging point to the corner of the street and back in was 10 minutes. Hooked up, walked around, made eye contact with a Hispanic guy, nodded, he nodded over, and I asked for 60 coca. And he gave me trips on 60 coca. Trips is like triple the amount what you're asking. So my look, obviously, he must have thought I was Hispanic. The few words I used on him must have sounded right, because he gave me a fucking shitload of drugs. Like, cool. And I'm looking, I'm thinking, I did it. I'm like, oh, fuck, give the goodbye signal. And they come and they swoop him, and he had a shitload of drugs. From staging point there to back in 10 minutes. And they're dragging my fish in. Now I'm about to set catching and cleaning this fish. My partner at the time was John Fox. You know John Fox. John and I came into narcotics about the same time. John and I worked an act together. We worked patrol together. John is a big man. John is about 6'4"-ish. And at that time, he was about 260 on the hoof. He let his hair grow out, and he looked like Sasquatch, like someone that just came out of the fucking mountains. And it was like, I'm down here to find a bride and going back to my cabin. And if you ever met John Fox has, as I tagged him, I called him Melonhead, because I'll never forget, we were doing something, trying to play softball or something, golf or something. And he comes out with a hat on and it's sitting up like this. And I'm laughing. I'm like, did you take that off, little kid? What is wrong? Your head is the size of a melon. So I would call him Melonhead for the longest time. But
Hey, so hold on. So for the audience, if you're listening to this and you're getting the description, there is the spinoff of this that is just audio is Coffee Time with Officer Fox. So now that you have a description, you can go back and listen to about 15 of his short episodes that he tells. Sorry, go ahead.
To back up a little, John Fox is another person I worked multiple years with in my career. I trusted him with my life multiple times in dark alleys and search warrants, and he always had my back. John is one of the best cops I ever met, and we worked great together, because as you can tell, I'm kind of like high strung and I speak 1,000 miles per hour. And some of the guys would call me Ricochet Rabbit, you know, because I just like always like, I gotta go, let's go arrest. And I'd have targets. And John was always the calming influence. That there was a few times that I wanted to jump into stuff, and there was a big paw on the back of my shirt, and looking at John like, let's think about this first. John went out in his mountain man look. He was out there for nearly an hour, walking around. Finally, he hooked up with a guy, and we're in there. I'm doing my paperwork or listening on the radio. That okay, Fox hooked up with this guy. Okay, there's a transaction. John's walking away. money is in the guy's such and such pocket. There's the goodbye signal, move in. And John comes in and we're like, the fuck, John? He goes, man, my feet hurt. Like, well, you walked all over fucking Seattle. So he pulls out the drugs. He goes, yeah, but I scored. And this is at night. So out on the street, he doesn't see it very well. Puts the stuff down and it looks like it's wrapped in cellophane. But right away, I like, because that's one of the things they do on the streets, they'd cellophane each rock so they could swallow it and pass through their system and get it back. So John is like, yeah, he's taking his jacket off and I take out my knife and he goes, what are you doing? I think you got a problem here. And I kind of cut open. I'm like, bro, that ain't crack. He goes, what is that? Like, I think it's chewed up toilet paper. So technically he got bunked. It's still like a charge in Washington State if you sell a substance to an undercover detective under the guise that it's a narcotic. At the time it was called the Turkey Law. You could still be charged with the crime.
Okay, now wait a minute, because I think this is you. I think I remember this. Did you buy broccoli?
Yeah, that was with your guys' money. But that was a totally different situation. That was a huge case involving the Asians. There was an Asian group that was out of the ID that was running a nightclub, and they were into ecstasy and stuff like that. And I met this guy through them, and I was supposed to be buying so much tar heroin. And what they did, so I was buying like 10 ounces or something, whatever your guidelines are. It was a lot. And it came in a ball about this big, and it was wrapped. What they did was they had taken the wrappers off of real tar heroin and wrapped this head of broccoli in it. You couldn't see the broccoli, but when you held it, it was like, okay, had the firmness. It was a very sophisticated rip. And it was like, you can't just check it in front of them, you know, because it's like, it's be offensive. So the deal's done, they're driving away, and I'm smelling it, and I'm like, okay, I could smell the tar from the wrapper. And I'm like squishing it, and I start trying to peel back some, and then I see it's greenish. And I'm like, motherfucker, they bunked me.
Yeah.
And that's when I cut it open. It was like, okay, well, I got dinner, boys.
So getting back to Undercover, what makes a good Undercover? And do you think it helped you? I mean, in that last deal that you're talking about, the guy kind of mistakes you for Hispanic. Do you think it helped you doing Undercover because you were part Asian? You kind of looked a little bit Hispanic. I mean, what makes a good undercover officer?
I'll never forget the first narcotics training I went to was in California. It was the California Narcotics Officers Association Conference, CNOA. And each year they trade, it goes from North California to South California, back and forth. And they had this guy he was giving the title of top narcotics detective for Northern California or something like that. He and his partner ran this year-long operation, ended in a shootout. And I tip my hat to you. You can be whatever you want. But he was given a class on brand new undercover officers. And he's like, I'm going to tell you right now. I look around and there's a lot of you guys that got the look. But I'm going to tell you right now, just because you have the look don't mean you can do undercover. Because you need to remember, not every person in this world can be a cop. Okay? Not every cop can work narcotics or investigations. And not every narcotics detective can work undercover. You have to have instincts. You have to have good common sense. You got to be able to read people quickly because it could be a matter of life or death. And you got to be somewhat fearless. And you got to be able to talk shit with these certain individuals to make them believe that you are who you are to them. But at the same time, you have to be smart enough to realize it's just a game. At the end of the day, when the bell rings, it's time to go home, you know? And so I found I've always had the gift of gab. I could talk street slang. I mean, I never swore. I never stared at people till I became a cop. And it was like, and I adapted to it like a fish in water. It was like, whoo, I can do this. This is fun shit. And it was like, so working narcotics was great, but I found that I could, and walking out on the street, my first buy, I wasn't scared. This was like, This was like acting, except the stakes are kind of high. You fuck up, you get shot, stabbed, beaten. So it was like, and I enjoyed it. So, and John hated the fact that every time we did these buy bus, it's like, go out, come back. I'm done. John, motherfucker. He goes, can you at least, I like, okay, this time I'm going to stroll around the block and, and, and take time then. He goes, okay. So I strolled around the block and it was like, shake off all these people, find my guy and in. And on the street, I always bought real stuff, but it was like, it was easy. Uh, it, it was just really easy. I mean, my last couple of years in narcotics, I really got into the meth scene. I was bored one day and I knew we had all these meth cooks in West Seattle and these white guys and they're idiots. But I also knew through informants and stuff, they were having a hard time finding Annie, or anhydrous ammonia. And at that time, the government was about to make it, label it as a precursor for methamphetamine, which would make it more difficult to get and more regulated. But it hadn't yet. So I told my sergeant, I'm like, hey, there's a chemical company in Tacoma. I'm going to go down there and get a tank of anhydrous. Like, for what? I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to get it and drive around West Seattle, see what happens. Fine. Go down there, badge these guys. I was like, you're doing what? I just want to borrow a tank for a couple hours, bring it back. Oh, okay. Wow, that sounds cool. So I got, it was a 800-pounder anhydrous ammonia tank, but it was only a couple 100 pounds in it. I'm not going to carry that much, but we went to our undercover garage. I got this old beat up little Datsun car, stuck that fucker in the back, the head of it sticking out. And it was like the Pied Piper. I drove around West Seattle for a little while and all these shithole areas that I know where all the cooks are. Go to the AM/PM gas station right from next to Home Depot there. And it was like, car pulls up and I'm like getting gas. And the guy comes up and goes, what up? I'm like, what up, bro? He goes, that's your friend Annie? I'm like, yeah. He goes, is it full? I said, well, what good would it be if it wasn't, bro? I said, I just kiped this from down in Tacoma through their fence and blah, blah, blah. I'm about to go take it and I'm going to break it down. He goes, how much you want to sell it? I haven't figured that out yet. I said, you got some digits? He goes, yeah. What's your name? Mike. Okay. Run the phone number. And a guy named Michael Potts, who was a fucking notorious cook. And I had him on the line. Hey, Sean. End up selling to him, going to his lab, taking him down and everything like that. I loved working undercover, but we developed a guy named Dave Redeman just put together an undercover school. And today it's recognized nationally. It's a certified undercover school now. And they get candidates from all over the United States coming to this thing now, as supposedly is what he tells me. But we wanted to put our own act team guys through and stuff like that had a desire to go out and do that. That way the act teams could use their own undercovers instead of tying up the narcotics unit guys. It was time consuming. They'd pick a day and it's like, how many do you want to do? Well, I got this going on, this going on. And then it's at night till like midnight to 1:00. So we started putting people through and the guy was like, hey, Cooper, you've done a lot of undercover work on the department already. Do you want to be an instructor? I said, what am I instructing on? He goes, the do's and don'ts, the safety, this, and all this stuff. And up to this point, I really worked hard on my craft as being an undercover detective, to being able to separate, to be able to, at the end of the day, go home. And I drove around with a cassette and an earbud in my car when I had bad guys calling me on my work phone. I'd just record the conversation. Whoa, what's up? What's up? And one guy's like, cool, or JC. I went by JC. JC, man, we're down here at this hotel downtown. You need to swing by, bro. We got these bitches and stuff. Like, bro, I can't do that. And I'm trying to buy, what was I? This was another MDMA case, and these guys wanted a party. I'm like, bro, I can't come party with you and shit like that. They go, man, come on. I said, man, I'm going to see my baby's mom. I got diapers with me and shit like that. And I said, I show up there to my baby's mom late and all fucking whacked out and high. You know what she's going to do? She's going to call my CCO. And then he's going to call me in the next day and piss test me. And then I'm going to be in county. Fuck you. No, it's cool. Or JC, it's cool. It's cool. All right. Call me later. What about that other thing you working on? Oh, yeah, I'll hit you up. Blah, blah, peace. I'm like, okay. And I go in, Sarge, that Joe Schmo called me yesterday to listen to it. He goes, "The fuck?" He goes, "What?" He goes, "Do you have a baby?" I go, "No, I don't have a baby's mama. I wasn't going on it." But it was like, so I'll never forget that guy's um, advice about people being cops, cops being cops, narcotics cops, and undercovers. And so that was my mentality when I did the training. And we would put people through scenarios. It would be 1 week of classroom stuff, the do's and don'ts, policies, how to prepare for these things and stuff. And then the last week, it'd be like 3 days of scenario. And then the last day was a huge operation that starts in the morning with a takeoff. And then you rolling this guy back into the, and you divide the class up. And we ran 2 teams. And we'd run all over county doing this. And people were like, well, we're undercover. They're not good. Drug deals happen all over the place. I did the scenarios and stuff like that. That was my instructing part. I enjoy that. I also, courtesy of your group, the DEA, they taught me how to make crack cocaine and methamphetamine. So I couldn't cook meth for them, like definitely did demonstrations of crack. I mean, it was like, get me some, the first time I did it, the guy that was running the thing, he got some fucking whacked crack or whacked coke from the evidence room. And it was supposed to be an ounce. It was a Mexican ounce, not even a full 28. It was like 24. I'm like, and I look at it and it's already been stepped on. And I'm like, Dave, what the fuck am I? You want me to make crack out of this? He goes, what? I'm like, go in the evidence room, find me a freaking kilo of coke, real coke, still wrapped. That has, you've smelt enough kilos, right? You cut them, and I know this sounds bad, but open up a fresh kilo. It has that sweet aroma to it. It smells nice, just like when you walk into a grow. It's like, this smells nice. I would never use drugs, but it's just the aroma was really nice, and a very nice kilo of cocaine that's only been stepped on has that sweet aroma to it. It's like, that's good coke, and that's, I mean, street people are like, oh, that's good coke. So he got a kilo of coke. I'd break off, I'd do 26 or 28 grams, and I'd bring it to the class and I'd cook that up. And using real good cocaine, you can make really great crack. And I'll never forget talking to my informants. I had this prostitute informant, blacked out, great informant. She'd come to work with a pen and she just write stuff on her hand. Like, I'd send her in her house, like, get me the guy's name and stuff like that. I said, how'd you get it? Off his mail. I said, did he see it? Yeah, but I'm like, fuck you. And it was like, or she'd walk out, go buy his car, right down the plane. I'm like, oh my, don't get killed. Don't get killed. But in the instructing part, it was like, we'd have 30 or 40 people in that class. And you put them through the scenarios and you were told, don't hold back. Okay. This is, make it as real as possible. And so I usually ran scenarios of getting jacked, getting ripped, life and death type situations. Because if you haven't come to peace with, what are you going to do when you see a gun? Can you stay calm? And because there's been a number of drug deals I've done where guys had guns. One of the scariest ones was this idiot that was up on an Al-Qaeda that I was buying a half-pound of meth from. He was tweaking and he's sitting on a gun. He's mad that I don't have the money with me, that my bitch has the money down the street. And he's like, motherfucker. I'm like, and all I need to do is see the drugs. I'm like, I just need to see the stuff. And I'm wired. I'm like, okay, you're good. And it's like, okay, let me go make a call. And I like, he has it. Come get him. He has a gun. It's underneath his left leg and whatever. But it's like, you got to hold your mud, because you can't freak out and jump out and roll and shoot someone, because then you're an idiot. But so I would do these scenarios. And there are command staff now on the department that went through this school that I won't name names or anything like that I put them through situations, and they walk out there like, okay, I thought I want to do undercover work, but I don't have the makeup to do it. And I had a number of people that came to me that afterwards or saw me at events and stuff like that said, you're pretty good with the undercover stuff. What are you talking about? Like, you put me through the paces, and I realize, because I sit there and I can't tell you 99%. I had a scenario where I I rob you. I'm waiting for you. You come into my place as like, and I said, yeah, just set it over there or something like that. And they do. And I pull out a gun and they're staring at down the barrel of a gun. And they're this, what are we like 8 feet apart here? So it's like, what are you going to do? And I'm like, get on the ground. And majority of cops will get on the ground, get on their knees, and finally like King's X. I'm like, what the fuck? What's wrong with you? Did you leave your ball sack at home today? Are you ready to die? Well, no. Well, you sure act like you're ready to die. What the fuck? And I always ask them. So through this scenario, what's going through your head as I'm pointing this gun at you and telling you to get on the ground? And majority of them are like, I'm gonna die. I'm gonna die. Then do you want your friends to find you laying here dead with a hole in the back of your head? Or at least you fought? Well, I don't think it's a well situation, And one guy was like, he nearly started crying. He goes, I was thinking about my wife and stuff like that and my kid. I said, maybe undercover work's not for you. Do you ever think about that? He goes, I am now, And I had a supervisor that really wanted to do it. And he would overreact. He'd fuck shit up. And he finally came to me. He's like, I thought it'd be great to do this, but I don't got the makeup to do it. I'm like, well, this is the time to realize it. But there was a lot of people that went through that stuff that it was like, bro, you're a good cop. Stick to copping. Yeah. Because you can't do this undercover shit, Not that I was a badass or anything, but it was like, you always have to be on edge. You always have to be alert, but you got to look calm, And it's like, because I always went into every role, I carried a gun, every buy I ever did. And some instructors say, don't carry a gun. And I'm like, that's fucking bullshit. Because I ain't Matt Damon or anybody like that, like fucking kill you with a pen or anything like that. It's like, if shit's going to hit the fan, I'm pulling out my Glock 27 with 13 rounds in it and I'm going to take my chance. Let's see what happens. But I loved instructing. And, as I moved on from narcotics into homicide stuff, I found that I really enjoy instructing, giving back. So, but undercover school, there was times, there were people that walked out of scenarios, you could see they're about to start crying. And I was like, don't take it wrong. It's just, this ain't your cup of tea.
Right.
But then there were people I met that were like, you're evil. You are filthy good. And it was like, I bless thee. Go off and offend, It was like, but that was far and few between. A lot of people thought they had a knack in it. And it's like, no. Yeah. Women, it's like, you need to understand, in the world of drugs, you're not a woman, you're a bitch. Okay? And if they want to whack you or do something bad to you, they'll do it to you quicker than a guy. Mm-hmm. Not to be bad or racist or sexist or anything like that. Drugs is racism. Okay, drugs, everything evil in the world, you see it in drugs. You've been in DEA, but working at the local police department at the ground zero, seeing. I mean, I've had informants get dope sick in my car. It's like, I was like, you want me to take you to the hospital? No, just take me home. Okay. Drop them on their porch. You gonna be okay? Yeah, I'll unlock your door. Go in. Call me next day. Call me, bro. So, yeah. So, but undercover work, it's, I loved it. It was, besides act, I mean, I loved working homicide. Besides act and undercover, those were my favorite assignments ever. Mm-hmm. Because they were both just high speed, low drag type stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, there was some thinking in the undercover stuff. And I know your guys' office, there were a number of times I had guys from your guys' office that would call me out of the blue. Hey, could you do this cold call and see what this guy says? Sure. What's my backstory? Blah, blah. They tell me, blah, blah. Okay, give me a minute. And then, we have, cold phone in one of our rooms and go in there and call some idiot and talk shit to him, tell him I got his number through this and this and woo, 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 can we hook up, blah, blah, blah. And call back the agent. Yeah, we're on. Really? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I mean, to me, it was just a job. It was fun.
Yeah.
So
All right. Couple minutes left.
okay,
Let's talk about homicide.
okay.
Were there cases? Were there cases in homicide once you got there that you enjoyed to do versus others that you didn't like to do?
No. So I worked narcotics for 11 years or something like that, and by then, just the flavor, it was getting old, and I was I felt like I was not feeling a challenge anymore. It was the same thing over and over. And the politics of it, this was, the early 2000s, everybody's like poo-pooing drug enforcement,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just always uphill battle. And so I was talking to my dad, and my dad said, you know, homicide is the pinnacle of investigations for any police department. You do know that. I go, yeah, but I don't know if I said, those guys are pretty good up there. I don't know. He goes, you, you never know till you apply. So it just so happened a thing went out on the department that they were putting together their hiring, or not hiring list, but their people coming to the unit list. And there was a couple people I knew already up there. And I talked to them. They go, oh yeah, you'd be good, blah, blah, blah. So, and the last couple of years of narcotics, I spent doing meth lab investigations. So I mean, I went away from the crack and the heroin and stuff like that because um, the meth, you're dealing with these meth addicts who are constantly up, who are constantly on the computer. They're figuring out how to defeat law enforcement. I mean, it was my first real taste of um, doing investigations, narcotics investigation. I don't know how to describe it. It's, to me, they're always straightforward, no matter what level. As I told people in the training, okay, I'd give them a scenario. You're going to buy a kilo of coke from this guy. Oh my God, we're going to do, like, you listen, let them ramble for 10 minutes. Like, time out, bro. What the fuck? And he goes, well, I'm buying I'm like, okay, what's the RCW? What's the RCW for buying a kilo of coke? What are you talking about? What's the RCW? Well, they don't have one. Do they have an RCW that quantifies amount of drugs purchased in any transaction? Does anywhere in an RCW in the state of Washington? Well, no. So theoretically, buying one piece of rock or a kilo of dope, what's the difference in charges? Well, none. It's based on its offender score. Correct. So with that in mind, you go out on the street, you buy 4 or 5 pieces of rock from this guy, you go through all your steps, your safety protocols and stuff. Why are you guys sitting here, your panties in a twist, over a kilo of coke? And they're like, they look, and then you see the light come on. Plan it the same way. Just the amount of drugs
Yeah.
are bigger.
Yeah.
And make sure you have all the resources. There isn't anything different. So same with, homicide. It was like, once I got in, I was in our unit, in the homicide unit. There's 3 squads of 5, and you have 2 teams in each squad of 2 partners, and the 5th guy, they'd call 5th wheel. Now it's like, yo, you can't use that term. It's hurtful. Yeah, I don't know what you can't use. But I was a 5th wheel. I went into homicide in 2005. I was a 5th wheel till just about 2009, before I finally got into the rotation to work with a partner to catch murder cases.
Mm-hmm.
So homicide intrigued me because it was like, I'm not that smart, but I'd really love to match up with a serial killer type guy.
Mm-hmm.
Latch onto a case like that, like a Ted Bundy case or something. I think it'd be interesting to work a case like that, but at the same time, you look at those cases, and that you're in it for the long haul. You're in it forever, ever, ever.
Mm-hmm.
And but I never came across any serial killers, and there wasn't any case that I ever had that is like, I just can't do this. I just can't do this. I had a friend on the department that was assaulted downtown, where he was in. At that time, we were doing our own OISs, or officer involved shootings, before the state and everybody changed the process and stuff. I've investigated officer involved shootings. So this guy, good friend of mine, he worked West Act, and it was like he went to this. A couple of them went to a bar after working that night and was having drinks. He's leaving, gets into it with somebody in the alleyway on his motorcycle, and it turns into a Donnybrook, and there's three guys beating him up, and he pulls out his duty weapon and fires and shoots one, and drops him. And I was next up for the next officer involved shooting or murder. So when I get there and I see it's my buddy, I told him, sorry, I can't do this one. I'm gonna go check on my buddy at the hospital. You need to give this to the standby guys, because I can't do this one. I said it's too close. But when Tim Brenton got killed in Seattle, and we talked about Cloyd Seigert, that was his case. So in the rotation, me and my partner were after Cloyd and his partner as far as for the next murder. So when Tim Brenton got killed, it was all hands on deck. So we're all doing it. Well, and to this day, I'm bummed about it, because it was like within 4 or 5 days of Brenton's death, this homeless guy gets found beaten to death in a homeless encampment downtown. And I was like, oh my God, I got to go work on this case. And I was like, so we caught our guy, but we were on, like, looking through the window at this great investigation unfolding for a very serious case. And it was like, and me and my partner were the only ones that never had a hand in that case. Totally bummed, because I met Tim on another murder case like 4 months prior up in the East Precinct. And I didn't know him, but he was training. He had a new student with him, and not the same one that he got shot with, but it was some other guy. And it was like, and Tim was just a nice dude, very on it, knew the game, knew what needed to be done. And it was like, and he's like, I'm here to assist you. And it was a homicide inside an apartment, couple of crackheads. Guy gets mad at girl because she smoked the last piece of rock. I mean, you can't make this shit up. So he gets a kitchen knife and goes to town on her and stabs her to death. Gets on the phone. Oh, I think I killed my old lady. She's back in. Okay, wait right there. Woo, woo. Grab him. Call us out. We're like, okay. And then I needed Brenton's assistance with this witness who was trying to leave. I'm like, you ain't leaving. And it's like, we're going to talk. And she tried to leave, and she got in her car and she took something out of her purse and sloughed it in the car. I was like, I grabbed her, thinking it was a weapon. It was drugs that she was on her way over to drop off the additional drugs for these people before they start. She shows up when we're there. I'm like, who are you? Who are you? Well, I'm the cops. Who are you? I ain't nobody. Well, nobody's nobody. Come here. We're going to talk. And then she tries to slough for drugs in the car. Brenton steps up. He goes, because now I'm thinking, okay, this is a mess now. We got a murder. Now I got a drug arrest. And Brenton's like, detective, you want me to handle the drug arrest? Really? He goes, yeah, it'd be great education for my student here. And went over the details of what we needed done and everything like that. Wrote a great report. It melded into our homicide case. He just was a really good officer.
Can you explain for the audience that doesn't know who Brenton, the whole incident?
Tim Brenton was SPD officer. He was killed in the line of duty on Halloween Eve night. Jesus, how long ago was that? 10 years ago? No. Maybe within the last 10 years, but he was killed up in the East Precinct, sitting in his car with his student officer to his right. And no, she was driving. He was sitting in the passenger seat. They had just done a traffic stop. And the guy had saw them. He was actually out looking to kill a police officer or police officers. He saw them. He passed by them on a traffic stop, circled around, watched them finish, and he followed them to the back side street where they went and parked, and he came up on him, and he had I think he had an AR-15, and he had his window down. He shot through their window. The female officer saw the glint of the barrel as Tim was critiquing her on the stop, and she ducked down, and she got grazed on the back of the neck, and Tim took the full brunt of multiple rounds of a .223 and was gone.
There's always that danger of being an officer, especially on patrol. But with that being said, what do you think has been the demise of Seattle? I mean, we've gone from, I remember being downtown Seattle where you could go to Pike Place Market and you didn't stray too far. There was always some shady stuff going on, to downtown really getting cleaned up, to now it's utter chaos.
It's a free-for-all.
What happened? What's going on?
I mean, Washington State is Democrat ran. So, I mean, I don't want to make it sound political, but you have two parties. You have a Democrat Party and a Republican Party. They have different philosophies on how to treat people and responsibilities, holding people accountable. The Democratic Party has become the party of you don't have to take responsibility for your problems. We'll help you. And so Washington State has been Democrat ran, and Seattle is Democrat ran, but with an even bigger tinge further left, which is bad. And it's like, and then the city council the people they put in the city council are all activists and things like that are anti-police. And I'm not saying this from my own personal view, but when 7 of the 8 council people all sign off on defunding the police during 2020, the George Floyd stuff, I don't know what that says about you, except you're anti-police. Mm-hmm. Then you had a city attorney, Pete Holmes, who got involved. Before we started recording, I talked about this, that the judicial system, the justice system, there's 3 tiers: law enforcement, the prosecutors, the courts. Okay. And if you mess with any of those legs, you're going to send things out of whack. And George Floyd, and I think a lot of cops would agree with me that what Derek Chauvin did in Minneapolis that day was not right, but George Floyd, I mean, he was a piece of shit, but he shouldn't have been treated the way he was. And I don't have a problem with them prosecuting Derek Chauvin the way they did. The problem I have is all the other officers, the backing officers, the officer that was his first day on the street that's holding George Floyd's legs, and you can hear him on the body worn video. I think the guy's going into excited delirium, which is a medical condition due to drug overdose. So how can you convict a first day guy that's following direction to the senior officers by just holding the guy's feet? But they convicted him for murder. So I have issues with that stuff. But that was the perfect storm that people have, finally raised up and like, all law enforcement is bad. Now they've taken the officers out of schools and stuff, like the resource officers. And they had this shooting at Garfield. A lot of people were like, well, we want the resource officers back. I got some bad news for you. The way you've treated the department here and the people on this department, the word's gotten out. If you want to be in law enforcement, Seattle's one of the last places you should go. I mean, right now they are paying, they don't have enough officers to field these like sporting events and stuff like that, because through the charters and stuff, you're supposed to have so much uniform presence at these events. And they are now offering it was an agreement through the city and our union that if you volunteer to work these events, you get $225 right off the top. And then let's say you put in 8 hours at that event, you get that time too. So they're trying to lure people out to volunteer because they can't staff these watches. When I worked Third Watch East, and I worked Charlie sector. We had 17 officers working Charlie sector. We had like 4 2-man cars, district cars, umbrella cars. If you go to East Precinct to the Third Watch Charlie sector, you may have 4 officers there at night, even on a weekend. And then they have to, the sergeants are responsible for putting out emails to draft or to get officers to come to work your shift. And the department allows that to happen, but you can only work so many extra shifts because you start getting tired and you start doing stupid stuff.
Yeah.
But they're so short staffed.
I mean, they're so short staffed. It's like what we talked about. There's word that they're going to start hiring illegals.
That I saw that. Someone told me about that, and then I saw it on Cairo News. The DECA students or whatever, DECA people, whatever. But they're basically people that aren't American citizens that they're going to hire. And they're talking about part-time cops. It's like, hey, do you really want to degrade your department by just bringing on part-time people? I mean,
that's the problem that nobody understands is you have this defund the police, and then you put this pressure on people where you don't want to be police, and then all of a sudden you're shorthanded and you want to hire these people, and you have to lower your standards so you're not getting the type of officers you'd even want.
Well, the department has already lowered the standards. In the last 3 years, they've lowered the standards dramatically. And yeah, they, under Chief O'Toole's watch, they hired their first East African Somalian guy. And that was a disaster. That guy, even before he got off FTO, he was working in the South Precinct. He was going down there on his off-duty time in uniform and shaking down the citizens in the businesses. And that we caught, you know.
What do you mean shaking him down? What? I hadn't heard the story. What was he doing?
He was shaking him down for protection money.
Holy crap.
Yeah. And that guy, so they washed him out of the FTO phase, but they gave him another city job. They put him in parking enforcement. I don't remember where. I don't know if he's still in the city somewhere, but they got him through the department. They were all, you know, and Chief O'Toole, I know her personally. I really love her. I think she's a great boss. But they're trying to do this community outreach and blend and everything like that. But this guy, oh my God, he was notoriously bad. It was like, some people are calling in like, yeah, this police officer came here and want money for that so I don't get arrested. And like, who? What? That was our, I don't know if I'm sure we have other people on the department now that are East African, but he was one of the first, and I can't remember the guy's name, but yeah, that guy was bad news. So, but they've lowered the standards, and it's only a matter of time that it gets to the point where you're going to have corruption and things like that. I mean, I saw it my last few years dealing with the younger breed of officers. It's like they wouldn't even. I mean, we're investigating. Not only do we investigate homicides, we investigate all serious felony assaults, kidnappings, not sexual assault, but harassments and stuff like that. So you could be in the middle of working homicide. Your sergeant's going to give you a workup assault case or in custody case where guy's been arrested and we have 72 hours to get him charged. So looking at it, you're like, okay, this is this. And then it's like, and nowadays the younger officers like to just autofill guys' information into the reports, which is wrong. And I'm like, oh my God, I call these numbers and nothing's there. So I watched the body worn video and the guy gives a different number. So I called. Nowadays, when I was young, and if Niles, you were a homicide guy and you called me at home, even though I got off at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's 7 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock, and I look at my phone, and it's a department number, and I answer that. Hello, yeah, this is Detective so-and-so in homicide. Did you deal with this guy? Yeah. Where's the paperwork on it? It's coming. Like when? By like 12 today? I like, yeah. Matter of fact, I'm putting on my clothes and coming in right now to handle it. Thank you. Click. Nowadays, I call these people on the phone, these young officers and stuff, leave messages, send emails. No one responds. And then finally, I show up at the precinct and catch the guy coming to work. And this one guy was like, well, I was off. I'm like, I don't give a fuck if you're off. He goes, I was off. I didn't have to answer the phone. I'm like, the fuck you didn't. And I dressed him right there in front of everybody and God and country, because if you know anything about me now on the department, my reputation, people either liked me or didn't like me. There's no middle ground with me. And it was like, because I say what I mean and do what I say. And there's a, a level of protocols that I know on our department. I don't know how it is on a lot of the other departments, but things started getting loose in the last several years due to the people they were hiring that had no experience with either team sports or in the military or something like that. Because if you play in team sports and stuff like that, which I did, you understood there's a hierarchy and there's a chain of command in anything you do, that you go through this, and you're there to pick up everybody else when they fall. They're not hiring those types of people. So, and this guy was like, I wasn't working. I like, well, why didn't you do it the right before you left? Well, did you arrest? Yeah. So what do you think was going to happen? Well, he'll just get out because of you dumb shit. Oh, I'm so sorry. Now go get me my, bury my foot out of his ass.
You know what, though? That's a really interesting. I never had anybody say it that way. It's a very, very interesting analogy, team sports and policing, because, you're looking to help your team, back up your team, do whatever, and especially paperwork, making the arrest. It's all part of the process through the judicial system. That's really interesting. Okay, so, all right, so I know you, right? So you were hard charger, loved to work, didn't mind the hours. How did it affect your family?
I was married once, was married just as I was going to narcotics, and that lasted about 3 years. And it was just, we were just, we were friends after our divorce, until she married an engineer, and he like, oh, your ex is a cop. You got a gun. Makes me uncomfortable. And she's like, I like, go enjoy your married life. Have a great life. If he ever crosses you, let me know. She goes, okay. But, when I got married, I sat down with my wife, and we made a choice about not to have kids or not. I'd like kids, but it was just like, not now. And she was going to business and stuff like that, and she didn't want to be bogged down with kids either. And so we didn't have kids. So, and I look back on it, I'm glad we didn't, because the marriage only lasted 3 years. I'm not married now. I'm dating a gal that I went to high school with. We out of the blue reconnected, and I've been with her for 9 years. But I think law enforcement work is hard on a person's personal life, especially young. And I think this is my own feeling, that a lot of guys that are married when they come into law enforcement, it's like prison. You sit there and here comes the new me. It's like, yeah, he's next. He's next. It's like you look at the new cops and they come in and it's like, okay, they're married. I give them about 4 or 5 years, they'll be divorced. Copying is addictive. If you really enjoy it, if you're proactive, you really like doing it. When I first started, I was working a 6 and 2, 6 8-hour days in a row and 2 days off. And people were like, oh my God, that's terrible. I'm like, fuck, no, it wasn't. We get in there, get out a roll call, race out of the barn. First one to get a frank or a felony arrest, back in. And it was on, you're racing around. I loved it. It'd be like you start the shift at 7:30 and it's like, holy shit, it's 3:30 already, time to go home. It's like, fuck. But I always loved it. And I think copying in general is hard on the personal lives of us. And it's like, the ones that get it right, which are far and few between, I think, is you have to have a very strong relationship, especially based on communication. You got to be able to talk about your stuff, because I know I didn't talk too much about it with my wife at the time. I don't think she would have got it. But the gal I'm with now, um, I mean, I'm a guy, and plus you figure shit out as you go along. Trial and error, trial and error. Now it's like, um, I'm not a blabbering idiot, but when I was working, um, and if she asked me about stuff, I told her, I'm never going to give you the full details. I am not going to give you the rated R version of my career. Okay. I'll give you a G, maybe a PG, just to let you know what I go through. So, perfect example, you got my resume. At the end of it, I've done a number of case presentations for the Washington Homicide Investigators Association. Basically, it's case study on cases I've done and worked up and got convictions on. And I've done like 4 with Wahia here, done one in Oregon, case presentation. And my most recent was at the beginning of June. I was, there was a gal from some national forensics conference. They were holding their conference in Montana. She had been to Wahia last year, and I presented a case there. It was a circumstantial case, a lot of forensics work and stuff. Reached out to me, hey, do you want to come and do this? And it's like, sure, last fling, right? And I told her, I think I'm gonna drive. So I told my girlfriend, hey, I'm gonna go do this conference in Missoula, Montana. You want to come with me? She goes, to the conference? Oh yeah. And like, see how the pudding's made. And she's like, I sure. That's when I made a plan because I know John lives in Idaho now and stuff. So it was going to be a road trip, fun road trip, and we hadn't done anything like that in a long time. But it took her to the conference, and I spoke on the first day, and I talked to people. Hey, my girlfriend's with me. Do you guys have any problem with her sitting in watching the presentation? They go, no. So I approached her. I said, hey, you want to see how it's made, right? You interested? See how the sausage is put together and everything? She goes, which case is it? I said, the Alki Chop Chop case. So like you guys, I nickname all my cases as like the Alki case was Michael Dudley. He got into it with 2 roommates of his. He chopped them all up, and Netflix came out and did a thing on it. As like the department was like, either do it or we're going to do it with someone. I'm like, talk to the family and like, we don't have a problem you doing it. Just make sure they do it right. And it just got released. I've had people hit me up like, oh, you're famous. Like, no, I'm not famous. But
So no way to, for the audience. It's on Netflix somewhere.
yeah, worst roommate ever.
Oh, okay.
It's my girlfriend watched it already, and she says there's like 5 episodes. It's number 4.
Okay.
And it's about a guy named Mike Dudley, and he gets into it with his 2 druggy roommates, and he kills them, butchers them up, and drops, puts them in suitcases and drops some of them off in Alki,
Mm-hmm.
and then some in the Duwamish. And I catch this case, and so I work it up, and this was during 2020
Mm-hmm.
when all hell was breaking loose. We went from me and my partner, we catch like 4 or 5 homicides a year. We caught 11 that year together, and it was like, while we're working that case, in the middle of that case, I'm next up again, and we catch this case where this idiot burns down the Hillside Motel up on 99, kills multiple people and stuff like that. So we're working this bodies case, and my sergeant goes, hey, you're next up. You got to come out. And you're like, the fuck? He goes, yeah, got a bunch of people dead here too. I'm like, oh my God. So we put that one on hold, work that one up quick, catch that idiot, bag and tag him, go back to this case, work that one up. We find out Dudley lived in Burien. We believe murder happened there. Long story, wrote paper, set up to kick in his door. Well, I'm next up again. So we scheduled the kick in his door. Let's see, August, April, June, July, August. Yeah, August. So caught this murder, caught another one in between, and we're about to kick in this. Okay, this one's tagged and bagged, and this one's like, okay, whew, wrote the paper and everything like that, and we're next up again, meaning we're ready. We're about to catch another murder, and we're gonna do this guy on the 19th. So I've coordinated with WSP Crime Lab, our department, Crime Lab, our CSI team, search and rescue, 2 SWAT teams. I have this whole song and dance going, and it has you've done major operations, and it's all based on timing, right? And it's like, and I've been pretty good about getting these things to go right. So I came in the day before, met all the SWAT teams, briefed them all, met all the units, blah blah blah, and it's like 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm like, Sarge, I'm smoked. I am out of here. So my partner and I, we go our separate ways. He goes home. He lives up north, and I go back to where I live. 7 o'clock, I get a call. My sergeant goes, "You got your next up." I'm like, what? And it's a drug shooting case down by Roosevelt High School, or not Roosevelt, but Franklin High School. Like, oh my God. And we've worked that till 12, went home for to be in for a 7 o'clock brief, 8 o'clock on scene, lured this guy out of his apartment or his house, take him off with King County SWAT. SPD SWAT goes in there, bangs the place. Search and rescue goes in. But we were there for multiple days. But yeah, it's so I was like, "You want to see this, right?" She goes, so there's, I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "Can I tell you tomorrow, the day of it?" I'm like, "Sure, I don't care." I said, "You don't have to." So because I've never told her,
Yeah.
she just knows when I'm hunting, it's like going 1,000 miles per hour, I'm down. 1,000 miles per hour, I'm down. 1,000 miles until I get what I want. And it's like, so, and I've been good with her as far as, she knows. I just have to tell her, "I'm hunting, honey, I don't got time for anything else."
Yeah.
She's really good about it. And I really love the fuck out of her. And it's like, so she knew what was going on during this time period in this case. But again, I am not giving her the R-rated stuff. I mean, people that work these crimes, this stuff stays with you forever. There's no reason why I should share that with really good people so that they have to carry it. This is my burden. I signed up for this. And I'm okay with it. Okay, it doesn't bother me. And I had to explain that to her before, and it was like, you don't need to see the ugly of law enforcement. I signed up for this. I accept it full-heartedly, and I'm good with it. And I loved everything I did. So that day came, and she's like, "Okay, I want to see the sausage." So we went in there, and I did it. It was an hour and a half long, or 2 hour long presentation, and people loved it. And afterwards, she goes, "That's a great case." I like, yeah. She goes, "But I didn't know you were under that much stress with the other cases at the time and stuff like that." She goes, "I could have never known where you carried it and the way you hold your water." She goes, "That's something." Like, it's something.
Yeah.
But then the victim's mom, Austin Warner's mom, contacted me yesterday that the show was released on Netflix, and she watched it. And I won't watch it. I mean, I've done other things. I have no desire to watch any of that stuff because I lived it, and I don't do this for stardom or anything like that. It's a job. I loved it. And if things were different, I'd still be there doing it.
Yeah.
But the city's gone crazy. The Washington State with their laws, the rules of engagement, and you know what I'm talking about. The rules of engagement. Tell me what laws I can do and what laws I can't. What do you want me to enforce and what you don't?
Yeah.
Sooner or later, it gets too stupid that if you just want a security guard, you can get plenty of them.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
But
what you're going to come to eventually in Washington is police are going to go away and certain neighborhoods are going to hire armed guards. That's all you're going to have left.
They're doing that on the East Coast. Look at in Atlanta, at Buckhead, which is a well-to-do area of Atlanta, a suburb, but they've gotten to the point where they're hiring their own little police force to take care of their area.
Yeah.
And like before I came over here, so I like to stay up to date on what's going on in the world. And it's like, the Supreme Court, or not Washington, but the U.S. Supreme Court just came down with the ruling on the homeless case they had in there.
Oh, I didn't even see it. What did they say?
So from the case from Grants Pass, where they took it to, they were told they can't enforce what they passed a law saying we're going to charge you X amount of dollars for camping in our city
Right.
if you or we're going to remove you.
Mm-hmm.
And the liberal groups said no, you can't do that. So it's made it to the U.S. Supreme Court. They ruled in favor of the city, saying, look, it doesn't violate the Eighth Amendment. Yes, you can move these people along.
Mm.
So that came out this morning.
Wow, that's interesting because
Yeah.
that case, you're talking about the Grants Pass case or whatever. One of the main cases of why that whole thing blew up was from Boise.
Yeah.
Same thing. So
Yeah.
that's super
So,
interesting.
and of course, the Ninth Circuit, who
it's a circus.
Yeah, it
It's
is
a
like
circus.
so. But the Supreme Court said, yeah, this thing about violating the Eighth Amendment or the Eighth Amendment, no.
Interesting.
So a lot of the analyst people are like, a lot of these Dem-run cities where they have huge homeless populations are quietly cheering that, yay, now we can enforce some of this stuff and do it. I don't know what they're going to do with Seattle, but and Harold kind of has the right idea, but they've changed the city council's look, more business oriented, moderate people.
Mm-hmm.
But they have messed with the justice system in Seattle so badly in the last 3 years. It's going to take at least 10, 15 years to bring it back to some type of normalcy.
Yeah.
And who knows what their definition of normalcy is going to be.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry, drug addiction is drug addiction. Okay, we've all seen it. If you've worked with people and being in narcotics, you work with informants, they're all addicts. And I was the type, I'd always ask them about their addictions and things like that.
Yeah.
And they'll tell you what's a scam and what's not a scam with city programs and stuff like that, and how to get around it and stuff like that. So to see, they've gone from drug addiction to now a drug problem is a mental illness. And I'm like, the fuck are you talking about? It's a choice, and some people have the addictive personalities that they probably shouldn't be using drugs because they're going to turn into a drug addict, but to say it's mental illness, well, methamphetamine causes mental illness. It rots out your brain. It's like, fentanyl, come on, fentanyl is not mental illness. It's bad choices. So again, one side is like, you don't have to take responsibility for anything. And the other side is like, let's play by the rules that are set.
Yeah.
Call the balls and strikes.
Yeah.
So until they can get a balance in Seattle,
mm-hmm.
I don't know if they're going to be able to get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just read an article in the Times. They're talking about home residences downtown Seattle for the first time ever are cheaper than homes in the suburbs, in the residential areas.
Yeah.
And that's because nothing is downtown.
Right.
And it's like you go downtown, there's no businesses or anything like that. Because Lord forbid the next big riot they have down there, people get cleaned out. So it's like, okay.
Last question for you.
Okay.
You just retired 10 days ago or so. Can you look back from when you started, when you were 21, 22 years old till now? Has your views on people and society changed?
To a degree, yeah. I remember when I first came on, it was like I was wide-eyed. I had expectations. I thought, try to give people the benefit of the doubt and stuff like that. To now, I don't want to say I'm jaded. I just, I've had these conversations with friends and stuff. I'm a realist. I know human nature. I'm not a doctor. There's no DR in front of my name or PhD on my wall or anything. I have a PhD from seeing it firsthand for 35 years. The worst people in the world and the evil that one person can do to another never stops amazing me, and it's like, but what addiction does and stuff, I've seen people at their lowest points in their lives. And then I have people try to explain it to me. And then, especially the last 19 years in homicide, sitting down across from someone that just killed someone they supposedly love or butchered, and they put their spin on it. And I'm just sitting there. It's like, okay, you're kind of a piece of shit. No offense, but at the same time, I think I came into law enforcement as a 21, 22-year-old young man, and you have ideas of what is right and wrong. You kind of nearly like rose-colored glasses. You're wearing them, and it's like somewhere along the line, my glasses got stolen. And it's like, and I'm okay with that, because it's like, now I see stuff for what it is. Like I said, I say what I mean and I do what I say, and I found a lot of people may not be happy with me at that moment if I get in their face about something, like other colleagues and stuff, but they'll respect me because in the end, I was honest about it and I held them to a standard and myself. And so I live my life that way. And it's like, but at the same time, uh, I I just see things for what they are now. I mean, my views and things have evolved to reality. I see reality for what it is. It is ugly. Reality is ugly. There's a lot of pretty things in this world, but there's a lot more ugly things, and they're getting uglier. But at the same time, it's like I can go in a store and I see a guy casing the place, about to shoplift stuff, and it's like, I need to go over here. Okay, because I've grabbed a couple shoplifters, and it's like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I'm about to retire. Um, but I just, and I see it as a positive, not a negative, because there's too many people out there trying to take advantage of everybody nowadays. And I like to think that I can see this stuff coming more than anything. And I can protect my loved ones better now than I ever could before. So everything I've gotten from police work and stuff, some of it's hard and stuff, but I don't look back on it and see any negative from it. Even when in my OIS where I took that man's life, I think about it, it's surprising. I'll be going through the day and I'll see something and I'll think about that shooting. And it's like, I took that guy's life, and seeing him on the ground dying. And it was, you know, at my hands. And it was like, and seeing the life leave his body. I'll never forget that. But at the same time, um, he was breaking the law, didn't follow my commands, pointed a gun at me. My training kicked in and I did my job. Where my partner that was with me, it affected him totally differently. So I don't know. I've always told myself, don't be like my dad and ever have regrets. If you want to go do something, go do it. Like, I play golf. My dad played golf, and it was like he'd always wanted to talk about going to Scotland and Ireland. He never did it. And I'm like, the fuck, Dad? Why don't you? So I went to Scotland. I went to Ireland and played golf there and stuff like that. So I don't want to have any regrets when I go. But at the same time, it's like I look back on law enforcement, and it's like in Fury when they're in their tank and they're just been through hell, but then they pop off. Best job I ever had. Best job I ever had. That's this job. So as I told people when I first started, when I was working 6 and 2, if I won the lottery, I'd come back next day. They're like, "You're crazy." I'm like, "No, I'm not. This is a great job." So
Thanks, Jim.